Okay. Yet another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time covering 16.9 and 16.10. Alright. Man, Aisha is so homestuck. Heyo, it's Vic, the drawer of the homestuck Aisha herself. She looks so Terezi right now. I fully agree. I do like crossed arms Brian. I feel like that's his natural resting position is crossed arms. He's just always crossing his arms angrily. And Greg's here. Hey. So, as a audience participation reminder, this week the question is going to be, would you have gone to the meeting on the rooftop? You know, in the way that Taylor goes to the meeting. And, you know, we'll discuss that when we get there. As for themes, continued paranoia, rash decision making, I'm not sure that there's a lot going on. But I did not specifically get that much on the themes section, so this one we'll just start right in on 16.9 as soon as the song ends, which should be shortly, hopefully. Yeah. I've underestimated how much the song was left. I'll just turn it down a little bit. So 16.9 starts in with Taylor waking up post-bombing. 2 + 4 × 5, driving and listening. A classic state. So yeah, she wakes up post-bombing and she finds that she's blind. It's not amazing. She theoretically has some amount of sight where she can see if there's light in front of her or not, but I think the image that we see here as the chapter art is something more of a approximation of the bug sense rather than what she can see with her eyes. And then she chastises herself for having looked into the explosion, which, you know, fair. Oh, and Vic says this is bug sense. Okay, cool. So I was interpreting it correctly. But yes, where are we at? So, yes, her dad, Danny, is, injured, seemingly unable to move and breathing heavy, etc. Apparently Clockblocker was able to save all the other wards except for himself, and he didn't get blown up, but he got knocked around by the explosion, etc. He probably had the good sense to turn his eyes away. Greg's right, cool villains don't look at explosions. If only Taylor had been much cooler and had not been looking, and had been walking away slowly with sunglasses on as the explosion happened. Vic says she doesn't really use the bug sense in 0.9, so no art, lol. Yeah, you could have given us a portrait of the underside of the stairs. She only does silly stuff in 0.9. So, let's see here. Boop. So yeah, the building got like blown open, so there's like wind coming in and sunlight coming down in parts of it. So the bomb and seemingly a whole bunch of people got killed. I don't think it's super spoilery to say that because 16.10 will be discussed in this same thing. It's more of like a frame up job of all these people getting killed. It's all like fake bodies made with like pig fat and pig muscle and glycerin and stuff. They kind of explain it better in a later scene when Taylor's explaining what happened to somebody else, and seemingly from what we learn, it is the truth. He really did use a teleportation machine to teleport in like a fake death zone of a bunch of people getting blown up by a bomb. So interesting. I mean, it's not. I wouldn't put it past Coyle to have just really blown up his body double and the three capes and all the reporters and just been like, now they can't tell on me. You know, that's kind of his vibe a lot of the time. So I feel like the first time I read this, I didn't even know if I believed him when he said he teleported the people. I was like, it's pretty fishy, and it's Coyle saying it. But anyway, so back to the thing. Lacey, the friend, Danny's friend from the previous chapter, is not moving because she's worried that she was injured by the blast and it really hurts. And Taylor hurts a bit, but she's like, I know what I'm doing. No one can stop me, Taylor. So she gets up and moves around. Kurt's unconscious. Apparently Alexander is out of sight. And everyone's out of sight for Taylor, but, these things happen. And Lacey is the first of many people who will not realize that Taylor's blind. I actually was wondering, aside from the paramedic who she tells and Tattletale who figures it out, like, I wonder how many, if any, people clock that she's blind. Because I don't think anyone does. Let's see here. Boop, boop, boop. So, yes. She leaves behind Lacey and her dad and Kurt to go try and find people on the stage because she knows about the mayor, etc., getting stabbed, which is where she goes to, and she yells for help, but there's so much going on that it takes like a minute or two for anyone to come over, and she's trying to apply pressure to a wound because apparently the knife being in the wound was not doing the trick, as it often does. So, she doesn't make any crazy moves like pulling the knife out, but she tries to make up for the fact that it's not doing the normal thing. 2 plus 4 times 5 says, no one can stop me, I'm Taylor! Yeah, exactly, no one stops Taylor. She's being pretty chill about how many bugs she uses. It's like she's able to keep track of the scene with subtlety without anyone realizing that Skitter's there. So she's obviously very, very good at this. And I know people are distracted, but I still think that it's impressive to pull off as a background skill, not tipping anyone off while you're, tracking everyone's movements. Vic says, she keeps being like, the lady is telling me to calm down, but I just checked, and I'm already calm. I feel like she's deaf confused in this scene, but I don't know. Yeah, and she even questions herself a little later on. I think she's so single-minded that it's believable to me that even if she's shaken up, her main thing is like, I hate Coyle. I need vengeance. Because, that's just what she's like. let's see here. Oh yeah. In the intervening time before a paramedic comes over, she is thinking about her general anger towards Coil, and then she immediately sort of is able to put two and two together that Coil's not really dead, and thinks that he had a body double here, because if he was to do a plan like this, he would leave a timeline in reserve where he doesn't go um, in case something like this happened. So she just doesn't buy that the real Coil died there. But it does. Her thoughts on what happened are probably the logical conclusion that he had a body double and that he let everybody in the front room die or whatever. It's not an unreasonable assumption as to what happened. But she is convinced, yeah, that guy got torn apart for realsies. And then let's see here. So paramedics come up, and she's she's still being subtle. She knows that where the paramedic is, but she's like, I just couldn't out myself. And then the woman is the paramedic is a woman, and she's very like good at calming Taylor. Like once she knows she can't see, she casually lies about who got like blown up and stuff, and I don't know, I just felt like she does a really good job in this scene for you know, a no name. um she's in like 4 or 5 lines, and it's like, wow, these paramedics seem like they're pretty good at their job. um uh oh, Vic says lying to a little blind girl ... Yeah, it's terrible. Who could do such an amoral act? Um, and I do think it's funny. In a little bit, she's gonna bring up like, oh, I saw. What about the? Let's see here. Camera. She says reporters. Oh yeah, so she says to the person, the reporters at the back of the auditorium, and then she's like, I thought you couldn't see. And my response in my head is, how do you think it got to the point where I couldn't see? I was looking at the bomb. But Taylor is not nearly that rude. But yes. Let's see here. Let's see here. What's the next important bits? So they get other paramedics over there for all of the people who got hit by the knives that Circus threw in the previous chapter. So they're getting proper medical attention. And then, let's see here. Yeah, Taylor's thinking to herself how she's handled worse injuries, etc., and she's worried about the blindness, of course. And then we have the I am calm moment that Vic is talking about. And I like how they describe Danny as the bald guy by the stairs. That's kind of funny. And Taylor acknowledges to herself in her mind that she may indeed have worse injuries than she thought, because when Panacea healed her in Arc 8, she had had internal damage from the bombings that Bakuda had done. And bald, says Vic, he's thinning. Yeah, tell it to the judge. Well, so yeah, she acknowledges that she may have worse injuries that she can't actually feel, and then she lays down, and then they put her on a stretcher, move her over to be sat with somebody else, so she has some time to herself in a way, because the one paramedic is tending several patients, and she thinks through the scenario, thinks about, like, what does Coil gain from this sequence of events? Because since he let it happen with his power, he probably wanted an outcome similar to this. So, why would he have Circus on retainer for so long? And she kind of realizes it's like, oh, I can attack these people without actually killing them, giving like a pretty good like assurance of being able to do that. I still think it's pretty dicey to have something like Circus throwing a knife. Like, what if they just flinched the wrong way? Like, she can't control the knife after she lets go of it. She doesn't have any power like that. So, who knows? Who knows? That is one thing where I have to just suspend my disbelief. I'm like, it's fine. This is a story with a lot of things that are more implausible than that. It's just that something about that little moment does set off something in my mind where I'm like, well, what if they just flinched the other way? Let's see here. And then she remembers that Trainwreck was dead, so he was supposed to be here instead of Uber and Leet. She is able to deduce that the metal suit was important, and then she's like, And so it's good that she sort of pieces together a lot of this now, because it makes stuff in the next chapter land better when Coil is telling the story, because we have this version of events where she thinks through things, gets like a decent amount right, but doesn't really get everything, and then Tattletale tells her more, and then like Coil fully kind of spills the beans. Beans officially spilled. Vic says, maybe it was a Dinah thing. How likely is it that Circus makes the hits right? That's a good point. That's a very good point. Let's see this. And yeah, Taylor's thinking about like how no matter what happens, this bombing is going to bring in a lot of attention to the city, and she's like, I don't know how that helps him bringing more notoriety and troops to the city. Although we'll see that bringing more notoriety and troops to the city is a way to directly feed his own power, since he's taking over the position of director rather than something else. Also, if he were to be like Mr. Director at some point, well, if any character were to do that to the PRT to any PRT director, we'd have a great Metal Gear Solid 3 moment on our hands. Oh my gerb, what am I seeing here? So 2 + 4 × 5 says, at the Baldverse Thinning comment, now I'm remembering the SpongeBob movie when King Neptune shows his hair and everyone is like, bald, 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 bald. And one guy screams, my eyes. And then Taylor is the one who said my eyes. Yeah, Taylor's eyes were burnt out by seeing Danny's bald head. And then Vic says, reasons why Coil should keep Dinah at number 237. Exactly, the reasons stack up, and you just see how it makes more sense to keep Dinah in captivity. You know, all the other possibilities, they just don't make that much sense when you think about it. Let's see here. Where was I? So, you know, they start moving her out of the building and stuff, and she feels the sort of fresh air, and then the sun on her face makes it, like, the burn hurt worse, which I have certainly had. I've only had a few sunburns in my life, like less than 10. But boy, a couple of them were real bad. Like one of them, it's like, oh yes, if sunlight goes onto this, you will immediately start hurting. And so I imagine her burn was made very real in that moment. Um, but yeah, she's thinking about how shouldn't it be raining on a day like this? Um, and a lot of the fights that feel like they should be happening in like a weird like a nighttime scene in my head, like they take place either like mid morning or in the afternoon. And when I think about it, I've had to like kind of consciously shift how I think of a scene, because like the mood of a scene will often dictate how like my brain interprets the tone and the atmosphere, like how they play it on a TV show or a movie or whatever. Um, and yes, in the emotional language, it should be raining, Taylor. Um, but yeah, then she gets sort of checked out on the way in the ambulance, and the paramedics. Um, it doesn't seem like they find anything, because it's like she probably mentioned if they did. Um, Vic says, like every week, I have to ask William to help me figure out what this guy looks like in that chapter. That's yeah, and sometimes I'll have to like go back and I'll be like, okay, so it hasn't said the time of day in like 5 chapters. I have to estimate how much time is. It's very silly sometimes. Um, it was it was worse earlier on in the book, because they would tell us like a time of night and we theoretically knew the day, and we kind of know the height of the like what latitude the city is on, more or less. And it's just so funny because like either things wildly don't line up sometimes, or like you just have scenes end up like not being stated specifically and in probably totally the wrong lighting. But Vic says it's so much work. Also trying to figure out what everyone is wearing when they're out of costume. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't mention it till like 4 chapters later. Yeah, and then it's like, well, damn it, to contradict me this far afterward. 2 plus 4 times 5 says, in the perspective of Taylor, shouldn't it be raining on a day like this, Leviathan? I already did that, y'all, last month. Go ask someone else. Um, very good, very good. Um, but it really makes me think of like an anime line, or like a Metal Gear line. Well, Metal Gear is anime; it's just a video game, but you know, it rained the day I was born. Stuff like that. Um, which, you know, that line caused one of my friends to perpetually say for a while, "It snowed the day I was born." Um, but let's see here. She is in the hospital. She was in after the Leviathan fight, but it's not cordoned off between heroes and villains. She doesn't get terrible treatment. Um, this is a pretty good experience being in a hospital in comparison to being yanked around by a broken arm while you have a broken back. Um, you know, her injuries are also much lighter. Um, so I think regardless of, even if they roughed her up like they did the first time, it truly, like, they would have had to do the most to get it to be as bad as the first hospital stay. um, let's see here. So, you know, they do tests on her and they do some like actual treatment. They like pull grit out of her arms. They, you know, go through the works. And then Tattletale arrives, but as Lisa. And Honeybee Tea. I don't know why, but I really like that as their thing. Um, uh, Yes, Tattletale instantly knows that she's blind. They sort of discuss things, and Tattletale's like, just don't worry about the eyes thing. We're gonna steal somebody's power. It'll be fine. Um, uh, oh, 2 plus 4 times 5 is starting to work. Bye, 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 bye. Vic says, Tattletale is so sus this chapter. Yeah, she's like giving very little information, and she's just like, we can get you a healer or something. Kidnap someone like Othala. Have Regen or Gru use her powers. Othala isn't around. Left the city. We'll hire someone with healing powers then. They won't come here because of the very thing we're talking about with Othala. I think that's really funny. Don't worry. I already made it the easiest option to abandon your dad again. Says Vic. Oh, there's Vale in the chat. Vale says, missed the alert. Can you repeat everything I missed? Not this day. But I'll give you the wonderful option of later on going back and watching the stream up to now. It's an exclusive offer to you. Other people really shouldn't be watching this stream on YouTube after the fact. It's uncouth. No, in my mind, I imagine no one watches these later. So it's kind of funny when I get the commentary from like 2 plus 4 times 5 or Uvale later on about like what you would have said in the chat at the time. Vale says, wow, that's like a superpower. Vic says, it really feels like she's freaking out or something. Yeah, Greg says, subscribe to Patreon for exclusive access to previous episodes. Exactly. Subscribe to my Patreon. The one that very much exists. Wink. So, maybe someday. Not now. I can't imagine having, like, 2 fans and doing a Patreon. It would be just, not enough people, and kind of weird because it's like there's so few people that I feel like I know them on a more personal basis than if I had like an actual set of fans. Like, this is some real parasocial shit right here when you only have 2 people listening who you don't know in real life. But yeah, to what Vic said about it really feels like she's freaking out or something. Vale says, if I made a site named Only Patrons, or Only Patreons, who would sue me first? That is a good question. I've heard tell that both of them do shady shit, so Greg says, I prefer OnlyTube. Yeah. We should actually put more names in it to make more people angry at once, I think. But Tattletale is like almost had Skitter get assassinated at the mayor's house and then almost get blowed up here, and then she's like, what am I gonna do about tonight? She lets the group go to the meeting on the rooftop, which, like, I get why they go, but, like, I don't know. I feel like Brian should have pushed back on it more in a way. I feel like several people should have pushed back on it more, but, like, specifically Brian's the cautious one, and they're all just being reckless as hell, meeting Coil. He's obviously gonna try and kill them off or something. So yes, I myself, while reading the chapter, much like Tattletale, am like, what am I gonna do? I feel like there's a real sense of being trapped whenever Coil is like setting his sights on you because of his power allowing so much room for error when trying to kill you off and so many extra chances for him. So it's problematic. Plus he's got like some pretty good capes at his back. And it's unclear how many of their troops, like if Barker and Biter would join Coil's side, or if they're actually loyal in any way to Bitch. It's like they can't really rely on a lot of the side muscle that they've had for a while, including like Tattletale's dudes. So it's all down to like the 6 of them and the dogs right now. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Tattletale's probably freaking out. Let's see here. And back to what Vic said earlier. Don't worry, I already made it the easiest option to abandon your dad again. Yeah, she sets up like a super specific like out for them to leave, and then she's like, when Taylor is like thinking about Dinah specifically, she's like, yes, go to Dinah. So yeah. And she thinks their chances for getting Dinah are better today and better if he's happy. But am I the only one? This is a question for the audience here. Am I the only one who thinks that like there was never any chance that Coil was ever gonna give her Dinah? Because that's been my sort of feeling on the matter. But I don't know. Like even when I was first reading it, I was like, there's no way. It's just not happening. But anyway, she says, my head was spinning, but it wasn't a concussion at work. Are you sure? Are you certain? And then so they Lisa says about him, he doesn't strike me as the kind of person who will be influenced much by his emotions, but I don't know. It seems like Coil, well, he's got weirdo emotions, very much follows his emotions, just like every other character in the story. Like any time that Alec thinks to himself, why did I do that? Or anything like that. Let's see here. So they start leaving. They're talking while they leave, and it seems like Danny's gonna be okay. And Taylor asks if they're to blame for this, and Tattletale's like multi-layered, like, not only are we not to blame for this, but we couldn't have known about this, and also, even if we were to blame for this, it's not as bad as you think. Let's see here. Tattletale does kind of accurately portray, like, if you had done anything, there's not really much different that would have happened in that scenario. And I think she's right. But I also think that by doing all the things she's done up to now, Taylor's put herself in a position where she can say, well, there was nothing I could do because, you're already in this bad spot, etc. Anyway, so now that Skitter's blind, now that Taylor's blind, then Lisa's like, it'll be fine. This will be how you learn to see with your bugs or whatever. I was already going to have you blindfold yourself, and this is just convenient for us, actually. What are you talking about? Being blind is shitty. It's actually great. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I had not noticed, but this chapter was released December 22nd, and like, I don't usually like to date these things, but we're doing this stream on December 23rd, and this was 11 years ago. So that's kind of interesting. Man, sometimes you're like, wow, this story's kind of old. I I know that 11 years isn't that old for a book, but still, feels like I was just reading it for the first time, a little bit ago. Because your brains don't necessarily see time in the correct way. And by your brains, I mean my brains. So, Coyle's going to stick to his civilian identity, which is revealed to Taylor with a news broadcast that Lisa puts on here. She's like, he's not Keith Grove. He's actually... And then we tune in on the news broadcast, and they talk about the bombing, and they talk about countless others have recently... This tragedy joins countless others that have recently befallen Brockton Bay. They just can't get out from under this shit. It's unconfirmed how many people were killed, da-da-da-da-da. Then they're like, among the people there was Director Pigot, and she's being replaced for her shittiness. Because one of her ward's equipment malfunctioned and blew up all those people. And so she's being replaced with the most honorable and wonderful Thomas Calvert. You may remember him from such exploits as shooting his commanding officer for not climbing the ladder fast enough. And not regretting it. That's actually his favorite role, is not regretting killing his commanding officer. And then at the end, it's the sound cut out. Lisa had stopped the recording. Thomas Calvert, I said. Taylor's getting more hard-boiled as my voice sounds shittier. So yeah, there's 16.9. It's a decent chapter. Not that much happens. Taylor does a lot of good thinky brain stuff. And I like that. So, oh yeah, I had wondered to myself, was Coyle living as Thomas Calvert in Brockton Bay up to now, or was he living under a different, separate identity? I don't think we learn. And it's not that important. But I wondered. And then... I also had, nope, that thought was for the next chapter. I guess I don't really have that much more to say about it. I think it's like her getting blinded and stuff I think it's a good development for the story. I think it really shakes things up, and it is, like Lisa says, good room for her to experiment with her bug sight and stuff. It's good for the main character to have challenges, like not being able to see things. I would find that very challenging, in fact. Let's see here. So 16.10, I guess. Moving on. They're back at the base. It's like emptied out of people and supplies. It's she's able to focus on her bugs more when she's mapping out the area than she has been able to in the past. So she like knows where there's dust because they can sense like textures better, and she's got so many different viewpoints on everything. And so she sees like textures of crap, and like she can feel air currents and heat and stuff, so she feels what's coming from where, kind of. Like, stuff that you just don't really think about your environment most of the time. And she has this idea that she's able to focus on it because her brain power is freed up from focusing on any of the background sight actions, like comparing and contrasting things, idly glancing around, etc. So, that's kind of interesting. And she goes and talks to the travelers. Uh, Trickster, they're all out of costume, but of course, still mostly just as dangerous out of costume as in costume. Um, it's a tense, weird thing. Um, Not gonna go through the whole back and forth, but she's like, "Yep, my teammates are just upstairs. They could be here in like 3 seconds if I call them. So just don't even try it, punks." But she says it a bit more diplomatic than that. Um, and then they're talk. Trickster's very like rude in this interaction. I feel like he literally should be more not literally. He should be, if he was being smart about this situation, more diplomatic with Skitter. I think that he could just Vic says she's like confused about Sundancing or wearing pajamas. I thought maybe she's wearing dance clothes. That might be true. But I just feel like it would have made the most sense for Trickster to try and play it cool, like, oh, yeah, Coil died, but we will still maintain good relationship. Like, he could just lie to her about the fact that they're, are or aren't going to stay in town. It's really like an odd reaction, and I think it comes from a very like emotional like place. It's like Genesis says, like, oh, he's really worried about what's going to happen in the next 48 hours, but it's just like another instance of him being a bad leader. Vic says Trickster doesn't ever play it cool. Well, yeah, he just can't like keep it together for one conversation. um Taylor or Skitter has another one of those moments of like, Sundancer's been mad at me ever since I carved out Lung's eyes. What a beta, says Sundancer and Vic at the same time. Uh, bu- 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 She's really, concerned about her lack of ability to see because she can't see anybody's facial expressions, so she has to judge it based off of some really, really, like, low data body language where it's just like, I can kind of tell they're changing, their posture a little bit. Vale says he doesn't have to play at a thing that is already. He doesn't have to play at a thing that is already his nature. So his nature is being cool? No, I'm sorry. His nature is being a nerd. A big nerd. Um, Not that there can't be cool nerds, but Crass is most of the time not that cool. I know, crass slander that will not be listened to in this household, and yet I still said it. Vic says, I think she must be coming off as super weird here too, which is probably not helping with Trickster's end of the convo. Like, she's making them uncomfortable, lol. Yeah, she's probably got like her head bent at a weird angle. She's being a real creep. Um, when is Taylor not acting like a weird creep? That's what we gotta ask ourselves. Um, so, they kind of go back and forth, and he's like, we're out of this city. We're not enemies, but we're barely colleagues. I'm, edgy Sonic the Hedgehog guy. I'm Trickster. Vale says she's making everyone uncomfortable the same way a bug in the room makes people uncomfortable. Yeah, why did this bug show up? Why won't it leave? We're trying to just get it to leave out the open door, but it just won't go away. It keeps buzzing around. So, Trickster continues his little monologue about how Taylor sucks and they have no common goals. and they almost got killed because they were saving Gru, and Taylor rightly is like, your plan, bitch, in her head, but also rightly doesn't bring it up and derail things. She thinks about derailing things by being like, I don't know, what if Ballistic wants to stay in Brockton Bay? And it's just like, I'm glad you didn't bring this up, Taylor. What would have possibly gained you to go down that conversational route? Um, then Genesis cruelly says, don't take this the wrong way, but I hope I'll never see you again. How the hell am I supposed to take that? Accurately thought by Taylor. So she's like, all right, this didn't go great, but it's fine. She sort of thinks through to herself why it was a good thing to invite the travelers. But I don't know. I think it's like I had a hard time, like, with a lot of these decisions, with being able to tell, like, is Taylor doing the, like, not the, like, morally right thing, but, like, the right thing to not get fragged? Like, I can't tell, because if they were, like, on alert, like, you've got to fight the Undersiders later from you know, Coil, then what if they came along to the meeting, and then, like, I don't actually think it's better to have them there with you thinking that they're there under this other pretense. Just don't think it's necessarily a good idea. Vale says, Taylor forgot to bring bagels and coffee. She will learn. Clearly that was the problem. Boop, boop, boop. So she also learned that Dinah was not in the thing, and she's like, technically there are areas that I haven't scouted with my bugs yet behind locked doors, but it seems insane to me that Coil would leave Dinah behind for me to pick up. And then she acknowledges, like, oh man, no matter how valuable I am to Coil, like, having Dinah as an asset is just so, like, ridiculously broken that, like, you know, he's not going to give it up. Which she's right. Accurate. And then, let's see here. There's a part here where, there's no page break, but she kind of, she's in her head the whole time, so it doesn't show any of the intervening stuff between the travelers meeting, and then, like, her having scoped out the building and then gone back down and then having gone back up with the Undersiders for the meeting spot. So there's sort of I think they call it, like, an elliptical edit. Maybe I'm using that term wrong, but they move us forward in time, and we sort of figure out, you know, it's very easy to see where we are time-wise, but we just sort of skip over the other stuff. I just thought it was interesting because a lot of times he uses a page break to do that. And this time he did not. I like that when they're up on the roof, they, like, kind of naturally form into, like, the superhero V formation with Taylor at the front of it. That's fun. She never understands when people are, like, positioning themselves to, like, show her in a position of power. And it's like, how is this the part that you don't get? You understand all these other, like, we need to show such and such by doing such and such. And then the one thing she doesn't get is why they, like, defer power to her with the way that they stand around her. And it's like, this is really obvious what they're doing. The readers get it. What are you doing, Taylor? They have a conversation about, like, escape plans, and Regent talks about, like, oh, couldn't you do X? And then Taylor's like, but Y would happen. And then they're like, well, what about plan C? And she's like, what about anti-plan D? Vic says, it's because her teenage girlness is kicking in. She's just shy. She's not anyone special. Yeah. I'm just Taylor. Yeah, they discuss escape plans, and she's got all this cord so they can try and Spider-Man their way off. And Imp thinks it's awesome. She wants to be Spider-Man, clearly. Just like everybody wants to be Spider-Man. And this is the point at which some rat bastard shows up. Tattletale's like, can you sense that they're here? And Skitter's like, no, I should have been positioned further in the building. It's like a bubble radius around me, and I can't sense low enough now. And then Tattletale's like, it's fine. They're coming up by the elevator. They'll be here in a minute. Or whatever. And then, or wait. Is there the elevator? Do I misremember that? No elevators. They show up the stairs. So they're up the stairs and stuff, and they're there. And, so, he is dressed as his, Thomas Calvert civilian self. He shall never be Coil again, for Coil must remain thought to be dead. And then Skitter's annoyed that she won't get to see Coil's real face, because she's blind. Tattletale recognizes one of these PRT people as one of the mercenaries that was in her squad. The excuse that he uses for this parlay with the Undersiders is, it's like, oh, I thought you'd want to establish ground rules, like with Pigot. And then Regent just gives the game away instantly. Imp is fucking with him. And then Skitter literally has to say to them, tone it down, guys. Probably not. She's probably, tone it down, guys. Vic says, it's good she can't see him, because if she thought he was hot, it'd all be over. Oh no, he's hot! Let's see here. So, they have a back and forth. They convince him to dismiss most of his soldiers. The only ones that are left are non-costumed circus uber elite. We learned that circus is like maybe trans or something. Tattletale continues to not be an ally. She's a problematic fave, not just a fave. Let's see here. Leaving Pigot alive was intentional because it would make her look worse to have not even died. She's not like a martyr. She's just ineffectual. Everything that has transpired has been according to my design, that kind of thing. The sabotage power supply was real, but they used the teleportation machine that we have previously discussed on this episode to teleport out people trickster style and teleport in other crap. And this teleporter was created with Tinker technology. So presumably some combination of either Chariot or Leet or them together. But yes. So that all happens, and then we sort of learn about that frame up. They talk about like how he's gonna He's gonna control the city because his planted mayor candidate will win after the other one drops out. And because the man is dropping out, there will be less suspicion that it's secretly Coil. And then Director Calvert will show his awesomeness by pushing villains out of the city, slowly defeating them, but they will keep evading capture, so they won't actually be in prison. And they'll keep working for him, doing villain stuff on the outside. So Thomas Calvert will have like an unprecedented level of both above board in big air quotes and like criminal power. So he would basically rule over a city with him, the planted mayor, the PRT, whatever, and then he would get more and more powers that he moved the Undersiders further out from Brockton Bay. Vic says about Lisa or Tattletale, she tries to make up for it by saying circus passes. Yeah. Exactly. So then I do also like the line, where does he say it? He says, well, it's actually Tattletale explaining his plan, but says, we wind up establishing presences in nearby cities, one or two Undersiders with a firm grip on a given city with other villains under us, establishing a new kind of villainy, and you, Director, as the valiant hero on the opposing side. Like, I just like the line, establishing a new kind of villainy. I guess it had to be Tattletale to tell to say a cool line like that, because Calvert is a loser. It's Gru asking why become PRT director instead of mayor. He explains through. Taylor asks about Dinah, and then at first Calvert is like, well, the thing is that, like, actually I can't give her away yet because I still have to do stuff, and I will do it later. And then she's like, no, I'm sorry, you have to let him go now, or let her go now. And then he says that he will, and then she decides that that Dinah needs to go back to her family. He says that he's going to let that happen with like covert supervision so that she doesn't tell people about his criminal stuff. And then Skitter insists that they go to deal with that. And here's another turning point where I'm like, what were you guys thinking? He asks for Tattletale to stay, and they're worried about Tattletale, so they just leave Regent and Skitter, or I mean Regent and Shatterbird with her. But like, I think they should have stuck together. But that's just not how it played out. So after that, Regent and Tattletale go with Coil, and then the dogs and Atlas ride alongside a like. Did they just use trucks? I don't think they're using like PRT vans. So they go beside one of these Calvert trucks, and then they meet up with where Dinah is, and then when she gets Dinah, then right then they turn on the high beams of one of the trucks, and then right when she gets the high beams of the trucks on her, she gets goddamn teleported. Uh, she gets trickster teleported by that damn Tinker device, and she's put across the city. Because that's another thing. The Tinker version of Trickster's power does not require it to have line of sight. Presumably it needs some kind of lock on them, but it's unclear how that's established. Vic says, I think Tattletale must be having an emotional crisis. Maybe Coil fucked with her power real bad during his plan. Yeah, maybe he did like one of the things where he like tricked her power into thinking that if she didn't go with him that he would like attack or something. I'm not sure. But yes, she's been teleported, and then she's all disoriented because obviously normally she like keeps herself grounded in her position by her relative location to like such a huge quantity of bugs in all directions. And now she's in a different place. So, oh my god. She's surrounded by containment foam because she spreads the bugs that she had in her costume around to figure out where she is. And then this happens. I tricked you. This is from the end of the chapter, not their first meeting with Coil, but the second one right here. And she says, "You bastard! No monologue? You're not going to explain how you did it? How you're going to deal with my teammates or explain what happened to me?" He answered with the pull of the trigger. Yes, Greg is right. She's been, or someone, she or I or you, someone's been bamboozled though. Oh yeah. So it's a very exciting cliffhanger, and it's a very, it's our character's low point right here. I pulled out this line. Who would you rather rule, a dozen capes or 50,000 unpowered civilians? And my response was, depends on the capes. Some of them are quite powerful. Oh yeah, and I had thought to ask after this chapter, because Oliver was technically in that scene with the other travelers, I wonder what Oliver thinks of Skitter. Like, I just have no idea. I don't know hardly anything about Oliver. Something to think about. That's where the fan fiction is. The internal monologue of Oliver throughout the events of the various travelers things. Vic says Oliver is head empty. Okay, I guess the internal monologue isn't going to be very good then. Final chapter thoughts. It's like a weird feeling chapter. It's like as uneasy feeling as it should be. It's like totally throws you for a loop. Feels uncomfy, and then like they get to the part of the betrayal, and it's like, God damn it! Of course there was a betrayal. I should have seen this coming. I did see it coming, but I was lulled into a false sense of security, much like Taylor. So for arc stuff, I think the 16.10 cliffhanger leading into an unrelated interlude, it's so good. It's the cream of the crop, and it has risen to the top. Yeah, I guess it's hard, this arc being so long and having so many pivot points. I do think this is kind of like what we discussed on a previous week. Like, this is the second third of the arc ending. And then the final third, I mean, fewer chapters, but it's like emotional and narrative weight of the like next 3 chapters after the interlude is it's a lot. a lot of stuff happens. Character stuff, plot stuff. Moving on from arc stuff into the characters. I put Danny and friends, left behind. Taylor moves on fast, you know. I don't have a super lot to say about it. They don't get much time to shine in these chapters because Taylor gets out of there quick. Lisa, we talked about it during the chapters, but Lisa's got like a really weird atmosphere to her this whole 2 chapters. She seems like masking that she's not out of sorts, but she's out of sorts, and Taylor can't really focus on anything, so she can't like figure it out super well. I feel like I should have more to say on their dynamic, but in these 2 chapters, but it's just really interesting stuff, and the stuff that I talked about during the chapter would kind of get repeated here. Trickster, I already said a lot of this earlier, but just way too confrontational. He needs to cool it for 5 fucking seconds, pretend he's still good allies with Skitter, and move on. Like, even if he intends to never talk to Skitter again, put in the work a little bit. Just put in the work here. Come on, bud. The other travelers, they kind of just get a continuation of their normal thing. Oliver, we don't get anything from. Ballistic, very standoffish. Sundancer, afraid of Taylor for some fucking reason. Genesis, says that mean thing to Taylor. How the hell am I supposed to take it? And then, you know, I don't got that much to say about them. They're being cagey and weird. Not just weird and cagey. Aisha and Alec, they are great on the rooftop. I mean, obviously, Skitter's like, oh my god, why are you doing this right now? But I love them. It's great from a reader perspective. Brian, he moves the conversation with Coyle forward pretty well. I think he's utilized well. Rachel does her thing, which is to not say a lot and look at a couple things, but she doesn't really have much to do in these chapters. I don't even think she says anything. She just sort of she looks over at Taylor at one point and comes over to look at what somebody's showing. Like, that's the extent of it. There's a lot going on. We can't check in with everybody all the time. Although I do like when we're able to weave in on other chapters, little character beats for everybody consistently. And I've complimented this chapter for the Alec, Aisha, and Brian moments in particular as nice little side bits. Uber and Leet and Circus, they're toadies. They're, you know, coil plants. Can we believe this? Yes. It's entirely believable. They've all decided to semi-permanent retire from villainy to continue Coil's sort of cover-up that they were blown up with everybody else, and have them as reserve troops for his future plans if he needs to have somebody show up. And he also says that if they are going to be in costume, they can just use different methods and MOs, and they, as long as they keep far enough away from their previous identities, it would still be fine. And he says how it's see here. Good. It just isn't worth killing good help. And, you know, obviously this is not what he believes. Yet another lie. And then the man himself, the coiling Calvert, he kind of tries to pull off his final, like, this is where the game ends, Skitter. And we'll see how that goes for him. We will see what happens. What's the old Todd Margaret line? He's going to be metaphorically gored by a literal bull. Something like that will happen to him. He will be metaphorically bitten by a literal bug. Coyle sells his illusion pretty well. He tells a lot of truths along with his lies, so. Vale says, I can't believe this is how the book ended. Yeah, that she died right here? That's crazy. There's no more chapters, actually. I forgot to mention, this is the last stream. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't really have that much more to say character section-wise. I think I'm good to move on. Powers, knowledge, and world building. I didn't write too much here either, but I did like that the paramedics seem to be really good at their jobs at this point. I mean, they've been through like every crisis. They're seemingly on point. And I really liked seeing the same hospital with Taylor having a totally different perspective on it. That was neat. And I was glad that the teleportation device was introduced. I feel like the way they plot out like the different things is like the event happens. We don't really know what happened, but they get to introduce elements slowly between Lisa and Coyle. And we learn about like, oh, probably there's some weird explanation as to why less people were killed than we thought. But we don't really know what that is. And then we get the explanation of the teleportation device, which seems like something we might not believe. But then when we see the teleportation device, we're not like, oh, this is dumb and coming out of nowhere. We're like, oh, she got by the same thing. Or at least we can backfill that later if we think about it. If this was the first teleport we had seen from the Stinker device, I think it could have easily seemed just like, what? I guess that's basically all for that. There is the world building of seeing that actually Coyle had a pretty good plan. Like, I mean, he sucks, but this overall plan, despite having a bazillion moving parts, mostly came to fruition. So, yeah, Coyle, actually pretty good at this. Audience participation. Would you have gone to the meeting on the rooftop? The first answer is Vale. Of course I would go to the meeting on the rooftop. I have never in my life skipped a single rooftop meeting. Anyone who knows me knows rooftop meetings are my one and only all-in. The slight feeling of being somewhere I shouldn't be as I make my way upwards. The need to be both stealthy but also act natural as I arrive. The measured crunch of the roofing material as I stride across the open space. It's just my favorite thing. I'd bring a backpack with roofing, comfort items, a blanket, a small headrest, and refreshments to pass the hours while I gaze to the sky, waiting for the meeting to begin. As night falls, the stars winking into visibility, and I know the rooftop meeting time is drawing nigh. There is just nothing else like it. So to make a long story short, so to make a short story long, rather, yes, I would. Vale says, it's a nearly infallible plan. And 2 + 4 × 5's answer was, yeah, probably. I get why Taylor goes to the meeting, but if I was one of the other people, I would have tried to tell Taylor we should not do this plan. Because I don't think that this is a good plan. But you know that Taylor. So yeah, unless anybody else has some answers, then I'm gonna move on. The question for next week is for chapter. Oh, Vale says 2 + 4 × 5 didn't go the extra narrative. Go for the extra narrative answer. That's true. True. This week you win more points. So Vale is the points winner. Anyway, the question for 16.z is, which cell block leader do you find most interesting from this chapter? Boop. Because our next chapter will be in the birdcage. I know, I've spoiled everything. Oh, Vic says, I would go to its optimal meeting place for getting sniped. Oh yeah, good point. Yeah, I wouldn't go. But let's watch that coil animation again while we listen to the outro music and I talk about links or whatever. So, as has been the case for many weeks at this point, and we're nearing the end of the song's lifespan, we've been listening to Monarch from ScarlettXOX for Arc 15 and 16. You can find her work at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Our Discord server can be found at the link listed in the stream and the YouTube channel description. The author of the work can be discussed at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Vale leaves us with a take care all, Merry Christmas, and Happy Holidays. Yeah. Bye, Vic. Bye. Let's see here. Just gonna let the outro play now. And mute myself, probably. Bye. Oh, and a final cheers for Greg. Cheers.